The Jersey Swap podcast is sponsored by Apollo Home. Folks, FCC is heating up, and so this beautiful springtime weather is bound to make things pretty warm in the future. So Apollo Home is here to keep you CSTers cool with a $29 cooling tune-up. Make sure your AC is running at peak performance before the heat really kicks in. Schedule your tune-up today with Cincinnati's trusted home service experts. Call Apollo Home or book online at apollohome.com and stay cool all season long. Okay, welcome to another Jersey Swap. We sit down here with the opposition every week. We trade jerseys metaphorically, all in the name of good sport, understanding our competition from their viewpoint. Right now, my co-host, my cat Gary, is outside touching grass. It's a great day up here in Cincinnati, but we're focusing on two Queen Cities this week as FC Cincinnati travels down to play Charlotte FC. We've got Anna Witte, who is the color analyst for the club, working quite a bit down at the Tar Heel State. Anna, thank you very much for joining us for a Jersey Swap.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to connect with you guys and chat about both of these clubs.
Yeah, I see that you're wearing the brand new kit as well, the Fortress kit that they've nicknamed it.
Yes.
We've got video, but we've also got audio. Tell how does it fit? I mean, how does it look as well?
Yeah, no, I love this kit. I think it's probably one of my favorite kits that Charlotte has ever put out. I love the attention to detail. If you can really see it on video, like just the detail to the fortress, and obviously that's what it's called. But on the back, there's like a castle right in between your shoulder blades. At the bottom of the jersey is probably my favorite part because it's an ode to both South Carolina and North Carolina. And I love a crisp, clean look, Jeff. Like I love a classic kit. And that's why I think I really like this black, the silver lining on the shoulders, and then like the blue around the chest area. It's a good one. They knocked it out of the park this season for sure.
I really think that Charlotte has some of the best jerseys out there. I really like that sort of that tri-grade gradient kit that they have.
Yeah.
I think that's their other kit, if I recall.
That's right. Yeah. It's like almost the ode to the mountains and the beach. And and the blue and the black and the white, like that. I love those colors. I'm a Penn Stater, so I've just been blue, black, and white my entire life. So I love these colors. I love these kits. They did a great job with the branding.
I think you might find some people here in Cincinnati
I was gonna say
not appreciating it being called the Fortress kit, but it just brings, I think, more maybe fire to this rivalry that we've got brewing here.
Right. No, I've seen some stuff on Twitter. This is my first season with Charlotte FC, and I've always followed MLS. I've watched a lot of games over the past few years, but it's just been really funny to see the fans on Twitter going back and forth about the Fortress, which stadium is actually the Fortress, because obviously Cincinnati came before Charlotte. But I think it's cool that there is like a rivalry budding between these two sides. Jeff, you talked about it before we hit recording. Like these teams right now are looking very similar on the field, like with their defensive abilities, their attacking abilities, what they've done to start the season. So I think this could not only just be a really fun game this upcoming weekend, but a really fun rivalry to come for sure.
If you talk to the average fan here in Cincinnati, I think they'll always say that there was a lurking rivalry, not just in name. Back when FC Cincinnati was in their USL years with the Independents, there was a pretty big rivalry, but Lou City sort of took over. Nashville had a little bit in USL before it came to MLS, and of course you've got Columbus being the big one. But in the end, the Queen City Cup, I think, should come back,
right?
As this derby named.
I think they should. I think we should encourage them to do that for sure. Maybe that starts this season. Yeah, I think these games in particular, like as we continue to play against each other more, it could be a fun cup for sure. And it's always fun to have different rivalries across the league.
Yeah, absolutely. We had mentioned that you are the analyst, the color analyst for Charlotte this year. Can you give us a little background? Where your interest in soccer really comes from?
Yeah. So I grew up in Cary, North Carolina, right outside of Raleigh. I played for a club there called Castle, and I just fell in love with playing the game. Obviously, I met a ton of friends, and I think that was part of the reason I loved soccer so much. But after my club experience, I went to Penn State, which I'm sure a lot of your fans might not love hearing that. I'm not a Ohio State fan, but I went to Penn State partially because I just loved their their athletics, and I always wanted to get in journalism. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when it came to broadcasting, but I knew I wanted to play soccer in college, and I knew I wanted to be around a big athletic program. And Penn State provided me so many opportunities just to get in front of a microphone, interview people. I got to interview my teammates and get really comfortable. And so after I graduated college, fast forward a few years, I started calling USL's championship games, NWSL games, and now I'm doing a lot with USL Super League. I co-host their show on Sirius XM every week called Game Week. And obviously now I'm doing this radio analyst role with Charlotte FC, just accepted the role a little bit earlier in 2025. So being able to be here in Charlotte and where I fell in love with the game of soccer, and it's given me so much of my life, being able to give back to our community and call these games and bring stories and let these fans really get to know these players and these coaches and continue to grow the game of soccer here in North Carolina is so cool to see. Like, this is where I fell in love with the game at 5 years old. And now I'm here calling MLS games and hoping that other 5-year-olds and other adults fall in love with the game as well.
Yeah, I'm really proud that with both of our teams, I think we really got a high amount of our fan base to really support us from day one.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what Charlotte FC has become. I mean, you mentioned that it's, I believe, your 4th year in MLS.
Correct.
Yeah. So you've had a little bit of time to buffer, figure things out. Dean Smith is now, I think, a permanent fixture on this team. I don't see him being sent out for any reason. So let's talk a little bit about what this team needed to do to build for 2025.
Yeah. Well, this is the first offseason that Dean Smith got to have. So it's almost like going into 2025, Coach Smith has been able to bring in the pieces that he wants to play with. And one of the biggest things that Smith had mentioned going into 25 is there was a lot of direct style soccer in 24. They really used Ajiman in the wide areas, Abada last year. And this year they want to work on getting on the ball a little bit more, having a little bit more possession of the game in 2025. So you've seen Charlotte bring in pieces that have allowed that. One of it being midfielder Eric Williamson coming over from Portland. He's been able to fit in the midfield and just allow Westwood to have an option to pass to hold on to the ball a little bit more. He's played well off of Pep Biel, which you could say Biel, he only played 9 games in 2024. So he's somewhat of a new addition to Charlotte. He's been a great addition in the 10 this season. And then obviously the big one for Charlotte is forward Wilfried Zaha coming over from Turkey. He's on loan with Charlotte FC, but plenty of experience at the Premier League level. 32 years old. Zaha just brings this leadership presence that Charlotte has never had. Like, Charlotte has never had a DP who can come in, who can score goals, who can be an immediate impact, and also take command of the locker room the way that Zaha has been able to do that in these first few weeks. So I think having a player like Zaha adds to the depth of the attack. He helps build players like the Ajiman and like Abada in the other wide areas. And then you add that depth in the midfield. Backline has been solid for Charlotte. So there are some new pieces, Jeff, but it's also pretty consistent from 2024, which is really nice for this club.
Absolutely. I mean, when they announced Zaha, and this is probably something that only a few people will know. We know him more from his time at Crystal Palace, because he was on the pitch at Nippert Stadium, our first season, 2016, friendly between FC Cincinnati and Crystal Palace, and he scored on us in the second half. So I have a feeling that a lot of people in Cincinnati are either going to idolize him for what he brought with that team. It was such a good moment in FC Cincinnati history, or they're going to have a little bit of a beef with him for scoring on our team.
I'm curious. I do have a question about that game, because I saw that in the rundown, and I love that you guys added that to this show, and the fact that you remember that Zaha scored. Did you see like any new fans after Crystal Palace came to town? Like, did that do anything for soccer in Cincinnati?
Absolutely. I really think that before 2016, you saw like your Man United groups, you saw your Liverpool, Man City, Tottenham groups, but you didn't see any smaller fan groups, supporter groups coming. I could see it right away, though, like 10 Crystal Palace, either existing fans or new fans, coming to some of these like bars early in the morning on Sundays. Cool. And you could really see that presence. I mean, I think it encouraged like Aston Villa fans and West Ham fans to come out a little bit more. And I really think that it made Cincinnati more diverse. I don't chalk it all up to Wilfried Zaha, but I
Sure.
do think that his presence and Crystal Palace really coming in and embracing this as a unique experience really helped Cincinnati.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's good to hear. I think all the time, especially back then, it was really cool to see those clubs coming into the States and playing against our clubs here. So I love to hear that. That's so funny. What a fun fact.
Yeah, there should be some more. I believe they're going to have another preseason or postseason series coming to the U.S. So that should be fun to see. I think Bournemouth is one of those teams, for example. But uh, so it should be a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
really think that that his presence is going to help more than anything. But I think the question I had with Zaha is really how Dean Smith plans to play him.
Right.
Is he going to be, do you feel more of a complementary piece to Ajamang, or do you feel that he is now going to become the set piece up front?
Yeah, Zaha is going to become the piece up front, especially in the wide areas. Zaha has the ability to hold the ball a little bit more than Ajman does. So a lot of times the build in the first two games that Zaha has played has gone straight into Zaha's feet and his ability to drive at defenders, get balls in the area. Zaha against Inter Miami last week was drawing literally three different defenders at moments. And Inter Miami has a great defense. And I credit some of those players and how they're able to win the ball and then maintain possession with Inter Miami playing down a player. But if Zaha can continue to build with these players and get more chemistry, I think that's going to open up space for Ajman. And Ajman Jeff is such an interesting player because he's only 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not a European player where he grew up with all this experience. He started at the Division 3 level, at the college level, and he's worked his way up to now 2 call-ups with the U.S. men's national team. Like Ajman has done a lot in his really young career, but he still has a lot of room to grow. So for Ajman this season, I think him learning from Zaha, if he can hold on to the ball a little bit more when it comes into his feet and not just constantly being a player who can go over the top, Zaha is going to help Ajman's game. And I think for Ajman as well, he's a player who is noticing he's getting a lot more attention now after his appearance with the U.S. So that's going to force his game to have to grow in different areas as well if he wants to score a good amount this season.
Do you feel that this may have been sort of one of the things that you saw last week against Miami? For those people in the know, Miami, I believe, 1-0
Yes.
victory against Charlotte, despite getting a red card. I mean, do you feel that there's still something that they need to bond together, that they need to gel in order to
Yeah.
become this powerful attack up front? Are they missing something with the existing roster they have?
It's hard to say Charlotte's missing anything. I think my first response would just be no, because there are really good pieces. Like you can't leave BL out of that. BL has been a really nice asset. But just to summarize that in Miami game real quick, it was a really nice first half for Charlotte. Like they really dominated their moments to go. They had good possession of the game. The thing that they couldn't do was score in the first half, obviously. And so there was a red card at the very end of the first half. As soon as Inter Miami started with the ball in the second half, they literally scored in the first 5 seconds. Allende and Suarez had a really nice combination, and Charlotte defense just looked really flat. So credit to Inter Miami and how they started with just 10 men and defensively just sat in. They had no interest in attacking after they scored. So it's a hard game to judge for Charlotte because in those moments, like you're literally just trying to work through a bus essentially. And Inter Miami had really planted that bus. But I think what Charlotte could grow in is moving the ball a little bit faster. Like, can there be, two touches instead of 5 touches? Do you know where you're going before you actually receive the ball? That was the aspect that I thought Charlotte really lacked in their match against Inter Miami, is there was no sense of urgency once they got the ball in really crucial areas. It seemed like it just took too long to complete opportunities in the final third. So once Zaha and Ajman get on the same page, I think you add Nathan Byrne as Charlotte's right outside back who gets involved in the attack as well. Once there's more chemistry, more games under their belt, and more consistency, like consistency is the key word for Charlotte right now, I think we continue to see this team progress.
Yeah, I really think that there's a lot more that needs to be added. I think within the pieces that they've got on their roster. I mean, we've seen them play really. They've had 3 really difficult matches
Yes.
to start the season. I mean, you have the draw that they managed to get on the road at Seattle, which is not an easy thing to do.
No.
We started our season in Seattle our first year, and we got decimated.
Okay.
So, but regarding, other than that though, I mean, the second game, was it a 2-0 victory over Atlanta?
Yeah, and that's a big rivalry game. And Atlanta was one of those teams, like $46 million they spent on their front four players. And that was our Charlotte's first home game, and that energy really helped. I mean, you touched on the new additions for Charlotte, and I think Coach Smith has talked about that. Like, he wants to add more depth to the attack for sure. That's something that they're eyeing on, and also into that left back position where they ended up sealing the deal earlier this week. But for Charlotte, I do think like Smith is really happy with some of the pieces he has. I just think it's like that final decision piece in the final third that like has not worked out. And to be fair, like we've only gotten one full week out of Zaha. Zaha's wife gave birth to their baby girl just a few days before the match against Atlanta. So he flew back from London, trained a little bit on Thursday, had a full day of training on Friday before that Saturday match against Atlanta. So it's still so new, so fresh. This is a long season. The first 5 matches for Charlotte are probably the hardest teams in this league. And I think you also have to take that into account.
I found it interesting you brought up the left back situation. I was looking at some of the sort of the subtractions that this team made in the offseason. The big name being Karol Swiderski. He's been transferred to Greek side Panathinaikos. I cannot speak Greek, but
it's okay.
he got transferred to Greece.
Yeah.
But also Jerry Uronen, who I believe was a left back but transferred to AIK. Do you feel that any of these departures that they've had in the offseason are really going to bite them in the end?
No, I don't. I think the departures were necessary for Charlotte. I mean, you look at Swiderski, he was a great player. He did what Charlotte needed him to do in the first few seasons. But I think it was time for Swiderski to leave. You bring in a player like Zaha, who's just adding even more of an elevation to this game. Like Zaha's more of, to me, like a really good goal scorer. Swiderski in times like reminded me of like a combination between a 9 and a 10. And we don't need this like passive, withdrawn 9 role. We need someone to score goals. That is something in 2024 that Charlotte wasn't able to do. I say we, like I'm on the team. I don't know why I said that. But no, and I think with the left back role, like you bring Tim Ream being a really nice addition. Charlotte let in the fewest amount of goals in the East last season. Our back line is consistent. Can't forget about our goalkeeper of the year, Jeff, and Kalina. He's a great asset too. So I think the pieces that they've brought in have done a really nice job of complementing what Dean Smith wants to do in 25.
Yeah, I really think Kalina's one of those names that he and Roman Berkey are going to be probably head to head until one of them goes back to Europe for a mega deal. I really think that the two of them are going to be sort of head to head in terms of goalkeeper of the year. Let's take a look a little bit at what this formation could look like.
Okay.
With Charlotte. First 2 games, from what I'm seeing, a 4-3-3, primarily a defensive 4-3-3. So I think more of a back 2 in the middle. We're looking at like you had said, Tim Ream on the left back side, which I'm still a little hesitant about putting him there. He's definitely more of a center back. But then you've got Andrew Privet, you've got Adelson Malanda. Both of them feel like they are bound for, we're talking about Europe. It feels like both of them are bound for a big European transfer as well. Do you feel that this is really what Dean Smith wants to work with, or do you see a change in the future maybe?
For the back line specifically, or
we can make it the back line specifically.
Yeah.
I think we know what the offensive part is going to look like.
Right. And there's some questions around the midfield too. But I think with the back line, there seems to be really confidence behind what Malanda and Privet are able to do as that center back pairing. Coach Smith really enjoys the nice give and take of those 2 players and the way that those 2 players have been able to stay consistent. Like the Inter Miami game performance, that goal was bad. But outside of the 1 goal that Charlotte allowed in, Malanda and Privet are really good at give and take, and their ability to distribute the ball outside to the wingers getting involved, and their ability to get the ball into Westwood when necessary. Both Privet and Malanda are fantastic in the air. I really enjoy those 2 center backs, and that puts sometimes when Charlotte advances into the final third and gets going forward, Nathan Byrne is the right outside back. He really can get involved, and that allows Tim Ream to sometimes slide in as that third center back at times. So I think, going forward, there should be no real adjustments. Reem being announced as being part of this U.S. men's national team next week against San Jose will pose some questions as to how that changes things and who's going to slide into that left back role. There isn't a lot of depth there quite yet. But I think overall, this is a back line that Smith was really happy about in 24, as he should have been, and is going to continue to use forward here in 25.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that this is a defense, barring any, and we've seen this happen, barring any major injuries.
Right.
I really think this is a defense that can stand the test of time, be very consistent. Maybe I can sort of see Tim Ream being pulled into the national team, so therefore you need to figure out what your defense is going to look like in the long term. We've had the same issue with Miles Robinson.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like Miles Robinson is bound for the Nations League. So
Right.
we should have a pretty solid team going into Saturday's game. Still don't have Matt Miazga available, but other than that, we should have everybody that was on the field and on the bench for this game. What does Charlotte's availability look like at this moment?
Yeah, availability looks really good. We were at training earlier today. I wasn't at training. Some of my coworkers were at training earlier today, and everyone was training. Everybody was available for training, and that's a huge positive. And I think that's a good point too, Jeff. Like we're headed into match day 4 at this point. It is still so early on in a 34 match season, not including all these tournaments everybody's playing in this season. So I think you look at like how healthy your team is, but you also have to add depth, and that just goes to the point. Actually, Charlotte today signed a new left back in Suleiman Doumbia, and he's on loan. His availability is questionable for this weekend. His visa is in an interesting spot, but I think that could be a depth piece for Charlotte in the left back role, barring any injuries. Just adding to that back line in general is so necessary. And Doumbia is 28 years old, so he does bring some experience over from Belgium's first division league. So yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting if this team stays healthy. But again, that depth piece, there still needs to be some additions added.
Yeah, they still have some talent on the bench. You had mentioned Williamson transferred out of Portland Timbers over the offseason. Yuri Tavares, I believe, is still a big name off the bench. He was one of the big names I remember scoring on us last year.
Mm-hmm.
Kerwin Vargas. And by all means, you also have a very talented pipeline in the academy.
Right.
I remember. My mind is a blank with what Charlotte's MLS2 team name is.
Oh, the Crown.
The
Crown
Crown.
Legacy.
Crown
Mm-hmm.
Legacy.
It's okay.
There's my prep work on display right there.
No,
But
you're
it
good.
sounds to me like you're going to have a very solid team ready for Saturday's game. And so we'll just lay it out here. We have something that we call the Growler Cup. All of our Patreons who are part of our supporters here, they can predict what the results of these games are. And at the end of the season, if you do the best, you get something. Don't know what that prize is,
Okay.
unfortunately, mainly because I'm not
So
eligible.
fun.
Guests aren't eligible. But if you were eligible, how do you see this game turning out? Do you have a particular score in mind?
Yeah, no, good question about the score line. I think it's really interesting. I think the response from Charlotte specifically after that loss to Inter Miami will be fun to see because it's very similar. It mirrors the Seattle draw, which very easily could have been a loss in match day 1. And then their ability to come out against Atlanta and score 2 goals and have a clean sheet. So for Charlotte, I know that they're looking to come out and use that energy and that loss to Inter Miami. But then you look at Cincinnati, and Tigres is a midweek match that they had to play. They had to travel that 3-hour, window that they had to deal with when it came to the start of the game time earlier this week. And for Cincinnati, they haven't used a ton of their depth this season so far. It seems like they've used about 18 players that they really have enjoyed using this season. And a lot of Cincinnati's, issues, so to speak, are very similar to Charlotte's issues. And Cincinnati and what I've seen from my prep so far this week, their back line is really good. And I think that's going to be a good test for Charlotte, how they can move around this back line. How can they disrupt Cincinnati? And the same thing for Cincinnati. There's some really new pieces and some pieces for Cincinnati that haven't seen a lot of minutes together. So how are they going to try and disrupt Malanda and Privet and Tim Ream and Byrne on the back line? So it might be a 1-1 match. I definitely expect some goals for sure. I mean, you got to do goals. If we're doing this, we're doing goals. So I'm going to say a 1-1 draw for this one.
I'm sort of predicting something similar to that.
Yeah.
1-1 felt like a good stick out match result, mostly because once again, I think our defenses are really similar in that sense that
Mm-hmm.
we've got some young players, but we've also got some experience back there. I really think that Miles Robinson and Tim Ream, um, I think both of them in their prime. I'm not saying that they're not in their prime, but
Sure.
at their best, they can dictate the flow of the field very well.
Yeah.
But I also see both offenses, being able to penetrate that. I think the game against Tigres, we were a little disappointed in how Kevin Denke really seemed to be painted into a corner. He didn't have a lot of action with the ball at all.
Mm-hmm.
It forced a lot more play coming out of Luca Orishano and Evander, but they can still squeeze a goal out of it.
Sure.
I'm going to predict a 1-1 draw just because I think both teams are also still trying to figure out what their season and what their style of play is going to turn into.
Yeah, no, for sure. Jeff, I think the attacks are so similar. Like the way that Dinke was a little bit taken out of the Tigres game is similar to how Zaha can be taken out of games. And then you have Evander in some ways similar to BL. BL can finish. He has a goal on the season. Evander, like the little minutes that I've seen him play in my prep so far this week, he is a player in your attack that is really strong and can create, but he also can create for himself. So I think those different partnerships and how those different partnerships on both sides of the ball really build will be really fun to see. And hopefully this is a budding rivalry. So like a 1-1 draw, I feel like bodes pretty good for a budding rivalry.
I really think also the key will be the bench. It depends on really who comes out and really, I think, triggers the offense or stabilizes the defense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess there's a little bit of rotation considering some players have played 90 minutes in that Tigres environment.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot from the likes of Yuya Kubo coming off the bench, getting a little bit more action, probably getting more from Orshano. I know he was pulled a little earlier in the Tigres game. So the bench, I think, is going to be the most impactful for both sides.
Yeah, I want to say one player in particular for Charlotte who's made a really nice impact when he comes off the bench is Toklamati. He had 2 shots in the Charlotte's match against Inter Miami, and the shots were like few and far between for Charlotte. And he only played in 23 minutes of the match, I think. And he also provided that own goal opportunity against Seattle. And it just makes massive impact when he comes on the field. Like he disrupts the defense. He understands the flow of the game. It doesn't take him any time to get into the flow of the game. And that's what a game changer is all about, is watching the game progress, seeing how you can make an impact on the field, and your draw onto the field can create opportunities for your team to score. So for Toklamati in particular, for Charlotte is who I'm interested in seeing hit the field. In the midfield, it will be interesting to see if Smith makes any adjustments. Bronico started in there with BL and Westwood the last few weeks, but it was Williamson who started against Seattle. I think Bronico will continue to start in that midfield because he is one of those players who's just good at the defensive side of the ball. He can get forward, he can disrupt, and he can just be a constant bug for opponents, where Williamson is better. He's cleaner on the ball. He sees the progression of the field. I think this is going to be a little bit too direct for Williamson to start the game.
Okay. So we've got our scores locked in, at least for a Wednesday recording.
Who knows?
Who knows? A lot of
I
things
like it though.
A lot of things can change in the span of 72 hours. So we'll
That's
see
true.
what goes with that. Anna, I want to thank you for your time joining me on our new video produced jersey swap. We had been audio in the past, but we're extending it to our fans out there. So the floor is yours. Let us know where we can find you, what you're working on, anything that you feel like you want to brag about.
Yeah.
Let us know what you've got.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Anna Witte, Witte. You can find me on Twitter at Anna Witte _. I'm on TikTok as well at _Witte _. And then I'm also co-hosting the SiriusXM show covering USL Super League, the brand new Women's Division 1 league only 8 teams, which has been really fun because there's some good rivalries, but you can really dive into every single team and what they can continue to improve on and what makes them so good. So you can check out that every single Wednesday on the SiriusXM app. And I think that's about it. I wish we could like actually jersey swap, Jeff. That would be, maybe that's something in next season we could do that.
I think if we're going to jersey swap, it might take a big chunk out of my budget, but
okay, that's fair.
We'll see what we can do. I definitely want to expand my collection in some way or another.
Same.
But I want to thank you for your time. This is going to be a really exciting game on Saturday. I think in the past, maybe there wasn't a dynamic quite there, but maybe it was just a dynamic in name alone. But I really think these two teams are they know what they want to be this year. They know they want to aim for the top. It's going to be a really good clash on Saturday.
Yeah. And I think too, like this is the first night game at Bank of America Stadium this season. I haven't experienced a night game for Charlotte FC, but everyone continues to talk about how electric it is. And like the fans really do show up for these night games and just playing in this environment, which, I know you guys have a similar environment in Cincinnati, which I love that. I love that these fans get so invested in these two markets and Charlotte in particular. So I think whether you're here in person, you're traveling to Charlotte, or you're watching it on TV, I definitely think that will come through. And I think both teams will definitely feed off of that for sure.
Yeah. And I think the next time that Charlotte comes into our stadium, I believe that's the Sunday night matchup. So
yes, August 10th.
All eyes will be on us for that one. That's for sure.
Yes.
So that brings us to the end of another jersey swap. Guys, if you want to see more of this, go to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Listen to us on your favorite podcasting platforms or check us out on social media at Cincy Soccer Talk. I say this to all my guests, Anna. Keep your kit clean. And thank you very much for your time.